Next up, we have poets. So our first poet is someone who's at our poet retreat this weekend, and so I'm honored to introduce Mary Rose Dougherty.
Thank you, Liz. And I wanted to recognize John and his message of loving kindness. I think when I go into the woods or the mountains or to the river, I'm going not to just a place, but a person. And to me, it's an extension of practicing loving kindness and self-compassion. Harvesting stones. The dog lifts the stones from the shallows, fiercely faithful, fervid in his attentiveness to the task, removing them one by one, brain, nerves, muscles, clamping the boulder in his mouth. The river responds by quickening the flow of its current. The river responds by quickening the flow of its current. The heart learns, removing each nugget one at a time in its own time, bolsters its rivers, surrendering to and carving out channels in the dark unknown. And this next one is a nod to John Clare, who Roger West referenced. The wind takes things and whips them around inside of us, howling. It takes our windsock and its many colors washed up from the sea. Sister, it takes the laughter you breathed into the dark hours of the kitchen where your husband and our father fought over you, stripping you to nothing but a name on an admission form, a lottery ticket where the prize is the state hospital or a private ward. It is as if you slip back into that sea where men make women empty so they float like driftwood. They try to silence us still, but it is their voices moving, seaweed in the charged night air. Sister, more shadow than light, I am calling you from the evening fog that wraps the water, calling your name. And this is another one came out of, I'm going to read because there was a reference to Persian literature in our group. And this is the most earliest, I think, version of the Romeo and Juliet story. And there is an epigraph from the author of this story, Majnun and Layla. And I'll just read it. Majnun's tears. He who searches for his love is not afraid of the world. Nizami. This longing for you drives me into the world where everything kisses me. This sky, this blue sky, this cloud in the sky unfurling its fingers, a fiddlehead fern in spring opening, this young, bright dandelion, the dandelion, lion's teeth, its face, my own little son, warming me, not unlike this mother and son, so earnest in their play, chasing tag in the field, deadheading the teeth, so they pop and fly at one another. This bird's nest of twig and fabric laid at my feet in a grassy patch, miracle for no nearby trees. Dearest, these gifts I lay at your feet. I am weary with gratitude from paying attention, loving the world so intently now with you in it. Though I long for your touch, your kiss reaches me in each awe and delight. Lightning bugs on the trail post humping, stacked like cars in a big rig, hauling from factory to dealership. The top bug, mail, sliding a bit back. The way the car on the carrier's top row always looks like it's going to slide away. Waiting for the dog, I stopped, and they appeared at eye level, manifested as sure as God unfurled his fingers to place them there. Seeing them naked with desire, I say, show me your nakedness, bear no shame. I too am traveling with only my meager self toward you, toward the first kiss. Still let us hold this moment, for even in my longing, I know its singularity. This first kiss can happen only once. Pausing, let us wonder at it. in small attempt to gather its mystery. Always you bring the wine scented with night. I am drunk without drinking the smell, fated to desire for you. Yes, the lightning, yes, the thunder. Are they laughing, or are these the tears of Majnun falling in the rain? For one with firm faith, when you climb a mountain, it is as much the mountain that lifts you as your legs. Soji Hamada. I went into the woods to leave you behind. A late start, the path leaf strewn, the climb up easy. I found a wall of stone to lean against and pressed my hand, my cheek to its green fur to comfort the animal in me. A tree hollowed out like a canoe, said it's all right to be empty, scraped like a gourd from its shell. For a while, I forgot. Halfway in, lost the trail, no blue blazes. I'd overreached. In the middle of the forest, a blanched heart-shaped leaf at my feet. Then, as in every love story, got my bearings, but the autumn sun was easing down. The mountaintop would have to wait for another day. Mushrooms bloomed everywhere, the pale white, the brown ringed like tree stump faces. Small, bright orange ones, fans dropped on a brown log as she, an almond-eyed coquette, tripped, hurrying on her way. The dog waded in a pool of water. Cascade. Mid-October morn, soft rain outside my window. You'd left me, but no, the truth clear as water, it was I who'd said goodbye. I wanted you, though you loved my voice, my face, my look, you weren't ready. Someone had cut you deep. Raindrops aren't tears. The leaves let go their grasp. Red, yellow, orange, surrender. Fire in the heart. The flowers of the nasturtium at Iko's had just bloomed as I was leaving. Fueled by their deep orange, I packed my bags. Days later, I dropped down the eastern spine of the Green Mountains, cross over the Great Hudson, then drive westward along the Susquehanna. I pass Oneonta, which the Mohawks called Place of Open Rocks. Otago, where there is fire. Unadilla, Iroquois, for the meeting place. Green, green, green mountains, fields, woods. The soft green mounds of the Catskills are as familiar as home, which really is any place I meet those I love. Build a fire as sweet as nasturtium's flame through heart's embrace. Here on Turtle Island, Native Americans called it Indian cress and used it to cure kidney ills and constipation. Some to stimulate arousal. Let me stand on the rocks of my journey, awake and open, receive its blaze and eat it up. This is the last poem. I'm coming to you from Vermont, which is the ancestral land of the Abenakis. Little haiku. Dear lavender, violet nights wash over me, flow into days azure, breath rushing through me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Our next poet is Susan Glass. Hi, Susan.
Good morning. Good morning and afternoon, depending, of course, upon where we reside. Hold on a minute. Okay. Excuse me, I'm having trouble with something. There we go. Thank you so much. I am honored to be a part of this Authors and Artists Writing the Land Festival. I've had the honor of being here before, and this morning, as always, I have been overwhelmed by in the positive sense of being overwhelmed by the variety of voice knowledge and heart and image and understanding of what it means to be embracing of a place in a native way. Dr. Francis, I want to thank you so much for that walk across the country. I am totally blind, and one of my lifelong dreams is to walk across the country with a dog. So perhaps we can talk. Because I am totally blind, I will ask for your assistance a little this morning. I first want to show you that I am reading to you using a Braille display. I don't know if that's something that you can see, but it's a Braille computer. And one advantage is that I then do not have to have a book in front of my eyes. I would like to read this morning from my newly published chapbook. This is published by Slate Roof Press, and the book is called The Wild Language of Deer. And I have no idea how this is working. Liz, perhaps you can help me.
A little bit over.
To the...
Well, I have trouble with left and right on Zoom. So
this way?
That direction. Keep going a little bit more that direction. Yep, there we go. Perfect.
Okay. So that is our cover. This is published by Slate Roof Press in Western Massachusetts. Master printer Ed Rayer, who does such a wonderful job with these things, and his partner Heidi Meissner does the illustrations. And on the opening page is actually got the title in enlarged Braille, The Wild Language of Deer, and it's inside the Braille hoof prints. And I cannot thank enough my friends at Slate Roof for their tenderness with this manuscript, for the community way in which we built it together with language and image and word. I would like to dedicate this reading, as I always do, to my mother, Flora Louise Bailey, who made sure that I saw the way blindness allows one to see, simply differently, and who taught me to pay attention. First poem is called June Bedtime Story. In the wild light before cataracts, God was marigold seed sprouting from between mother's fingers, my first nursery to water and smell. Together we tamped the earth, our forearms and knees touching. She stood, and I, child God at ear level with patchwork knees, listened to a wheelbarrow on stone, pulled by mother hands, earth-gloved and honest, the flapping burlap of apron of mother lap, the snips, the trowel. God became dwarf plants and plastic six-packs and spiderweb roots clinging, and the seedlings begot evening, smelling of onions. I crouched in the basin our knees had made, unsure how seed graves could spawn life, afraid of leaving them to their dark work, afraid of running away. This next piece is called Grandmother Oak. In my early theology as a child, I did not distinguish between my human grandmothers and the grandmothers I found in our garden. Grandmother Oak, you claimed the back hill before fences, patio, paths, so we made you an altar there, railroad tie steps guiding our feet, your children and rosemary sprouting around you, tumbled sharp leaves for bare heels, prickly acorns, and always a summer toad napping beneath a log. I thought your branches were saying, bracketa, 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 until I learned there were acorn woodpeckers roosting, and you, their granary, granary, granary tree. One January night, you gathered all of California's wind into your roaring hair. I climbed your hill and wrapped my arms around your girth as far as they would reach. My hands did not touch. I rested my cheek on your rough skirt. Your windy voice swelled, and your still body anchored me. This next poem is called Listening Blind to a Buick's Wren. His melody is symmetrical, practiced. La 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 la, Siebert. He lilts from an oleander bush, rests 3 measures, then la 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 la, Siebert. His tail must be conducting, a black-barred, white-tipped baton curved over his back and flicking side to side. Does his tail drive his music, or his music, his tale. Halfway through my steaming coffee, he changes tunes, ta ti 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 tree, as though juggling mistletoe berries, till their speed becomes a trill, ta 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 ti 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 tree. The trill bounces through toyon shrubs, so I turn my head to follow. Cha, 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 cha. His scolding, his wife's. Cha, 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 zzz. His caul pounces in a tangle of leaves and twigs. I imagine his upward curving bill snapping a beetle, swallowing it whole, then borrowing a sycamore leaf napkin. Silence. And now, from much farther off, Sree, Sree, Sree. The same wren or another. In my next life, I want to be his bold white eyebrows and his ventriloquism.
You have about 2.5 minutes, Susan.
How much?
2.5.
Okay. Then I will close with the title poem from this book. It's called The Wild Language of Deer. The deer appears in my family room, and I throw down every myth I've ever read. Great stags in the Danish king's forest, northern stars flickering in their antlers, Artemis buck avenged, Irish fairies milking hinds. This doe's bones are harder than the maple piano. Her hooves puncture the oak floor, cut jagged braille stanzas to the kitchen's rim. Her knees dispose of chairs, her shoulders thrust musky scented into the breakfast nook, and the head mounted over the fireplace is like any face emerging from a dream that bewilders, that asks, "What is this place?" Her body is a dark space under basement stairs where we flatten together on our bellies. I pull wet sentences from the clay of her flanks. They smell like fermented potatoes. They are the mute story I'm telling of her furious severed head. They are poems that will never domesticate, that welcome this wild language back into my home. Thank you so much.
I think you still have time for one more, Susan, if you have.
Okay, sure. I will read the closing poem. Dusk waking. I stand near a mounted horsewoman who passes me braided reins. There are differences, she says, between Western and English riding. For English, a structured gait and timing are everything. For Western, it's space you need, wide sounds, a future you can't predict. I accept the offered reins and mount, not her horse, but the sorrel mare beside it. We ease our sand-shod way under pepper trees, then out into the open shadow tracks. The long dusk our waking is. We call it future.
Thank you, Susan. Our next reader is Melissa Tuckey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this festival, and it's great to be here with you. I'm going to read a couple poems from my book, Tenuous Chapel. And yesterday we had a great workshop on grief, ecological grief, and this poem, I think, speaks to that. Dying grass moon, a great aunt, her eyes sinking, a hospital bed. Uncle asleep in front of the television, where we all die. I want to open the window. I've come to be fond of air, to believe in the lungs, that they do what they do without thinking. The blue hills in sunlight, what mother saw as destitute. Some rocks we made into pantheon. Cedar trees the wind blew down. With every breath, the world disappears more completely. And this next poem is inspired by work I did years ago. I worked as an environmental activist in the military toxics movement and working for safe disposal of chemical weapons. And as part of that work, we traveled, a bunch of US activists, to Russia. And this is a poem in response to that. And that whole trip is so much on my mind right now with what is happening in the Ukraine and where so many of our resources go to war. Elegy for Disappointment. In Moscow, a man with a rocket launcher circles the embassy. Art Deco fixtures, everything polished and waiting. An old man at the public meeting shakes his book of poems at us, admonishes us for knowing nothing. At midnight, our train lurches to a halt. Women shine flashlights on chandeliers they've come to sell in the snow. Dinner with army contractors and a woman singing. Summertime and the living's easy. The sky's a bloodshot eye above the scar of landscape. Smokestacks in the distance like inch-high soldiers. Shot glasses on a darkening bar. And I also want to read a poem from my labor of love, Ghost Fishing, which is an eco-justice poetry anthology, and that was published 4 years ago. And this book brings together contemporary poetry, a culturally diverse collection of poems at the intersection of social justice and the environment on a wide range of topics. And there is also a section on war in that book. And I'll read you a poem from that section. This is Sarah Godarzi, Another Day. And again, with love and solidarity and prayers for everyone in harm's way. Another day. It is the birds I worry about when the streets become shadows and the plains litter the sky. When my father wraps my hand in his and we're headed down to the basement again where it's safest. It is the birds I worry about when anti-aircraft tracers are brighter than the stars. And I'm watching through a small window, praying to a God I won't believe in when the sky clears. It is the birds I worry about when the bomb of the night finally drops and a family is dust. It is the birds that I, a 9-year-old, worry about because it's their song that wakes me to another day. And Sarah grew up on the edge, on the border between Iran and Iraq during that conflict. And I want to read a couple new poems of mine for you. And let's see, scroll for a second. A different kind of bird poem. This is titled Dictator as Wounded Bird. When he tweets, reverse the order of his words. With the tiniest of stethoscopes, listen for his heart. If he becomes agitated, cover his cage with a blanket. Line his enclosure with old newspaper, crystal, amulets, and silk. For breakfast, the blood of snakes. Teach him how to say pretty bird. Offer him parsley and a mirror. Do not let him out. For our own dictators. And this next poem is from a series that I'm working on of poems that are inspired from newspaper headlines. And the headline for this poem is "Lab-grown meat could make strides in 2022 as startups push for US approval." And that was on CNBC. Lab-grown meat could make strides in 2022 as startups push for US approval. I consume the delicate heart meat of poems, gnaw on the gristle of the broth's soupy bones, slurp and pontificate, lick clean the deep fried tortilla salt, wade deep among the knee-high corn, bow to its majesty. Let it dry raspy on an August wind. I've crushed the grapes with my feet, turned the crank on the whetstone mill, wine sauce reducing in a pan. What I mean is, I've dog-eared pages and dug potatoes, loyal to the earth, lazed in the shade and gathered from the bowels of the forest, hauled compost and manure, covered beds in summer hay, hogs fed on acorns, cows fat with summer grass. Some say the lab holds all futures. I'd rather eat insects than investment meat. And not sure, do I have 2 more minutes?
One more.
One more. I think I left myself with 1 extra minute here, but I will read the first section of someone else's poem. I've been reading poems today from the Ukraine, from this wonderful book, Words for War, New Poems from Ukraine. And this poem is from Anastasia Afanasvera. Forgive my pronunciation. That's my home. That's my home. There was a bridge here. Now there isn't. That's my home. That's my yard. It's still here. Where a bridge stood, there's a river. No more bridge. Where once was a pass, now there's a line. We live here on the line. In the devil's belly, that's where. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next reader is Katherine Journeay.
Hi, thanks for having me, Liz. I wanted to speak, the poetry I've written dates from being on vacation. My husband has a friend whose family owns an island in Maine. And we are invited to vacation with them once every other year or so. This island was in the territory of the Wabanaki, the Passamaquoddy, and the Abenaki. It has been in the possession of this family since the 1800s. It has several houses of that period on it in which we stay. And there's a working farm and a staff who live there all year round. The rest of the island is treed, deeply treed. It's a nature preserve and it has astonishing biodiversity. I've made a habit of trying to write a poem a day when I'm there. And this is, all of these poems come from this place. This first one is called Reading Whitman on Roke Island. It is unfashionable to honor those who came before us. And yet, I sit in the house of George Augustus Gardner, of Isabella Stewart, reading the only book of poetry I can find. It's like he speaks to me here in the drawing room, to a life lived on the edge of privilege, on the edge of belonging, on the edge of a great good fortune. There are no stevedores now, fewer butcher boys or drovers, but I hear their song and I remember their voices as my own. Unlock my soul. Give me the voice of farmers, of the unpaid intern trying to grow wiser than her birthright. Give me the voice of the lobsterman, of the housewife making jellies in her kitchen, of the ambulance driver picking up drunks and meth addicts one more time. Give me the whistling song of the carpenter keeping time with his hammer. Uncle Walt, your grass is under my feet. Your words are in my head. I know I am an uneasy guest on this green and holy island. The house that we stay in has a porch. The porch faces, wraps around, so there's a porch on the sunrise side and on the sunset side, and the third side faces the woods. We call it Channel 1. There's no television, so we call it Channel 1 is the front porch and Channel 2 is the back porch. And we sit and we watch Channel 1. So this is a poem from Channel 1 called From the Porch. What I can hear from the porch: wind in the long grass, the delicate crunch of the sheep making that grass shorter, finches calling to each other in their golden jackets, tires rolling on a gravel road, the stereo in the kitchen playing jazz, mournful and sweet. What I cannot hear: the flutter of the butterfly's wings as it passes, the crack of a mushroom pushing up through the soil, the snapping threads of my father's mind starting to slowly unravel. Susan, this one's for you. Deer path. On a hunt for chanterelles, we stepped onto the hushed and holy space of a deer path. The light filtered fitfully through the thick spruce staves, limning little more than spider webs and broken branches. The needles still cupped the rain from the night before, the sun turning it into curlicules of scentless incense. There was no sound but the hush of our feet on the thick mat of moss and leaf litter. I cannot help to think of the twisting brown path and damp earth to be the central nave of a church. The light feels as dim and filtered as through stained glass. On this ragged island, I remind myself that cathedrals were designed to invoke these wild spaces and not the other way around. As churches are the place where one goes to meet God, I hold my breath and wonder when the stag with delicate feet will come towards us, horns brushed with sunlight, his breath the same breath as the rainfall curling through the expectant loft. No stag comes, of course. We must infer his presence in the narrowness of the path, in the stillness of the air, and his breath, which is shared with our own. We push deeper into the gloom. The aliveness is overwhelming. The earth itself seems to cradle our footfalls, to spring up after our passage, erasing any mark of our presence, even as it welcomes us in. It was there, in a labyrinthine twist in the brown, we sight, if not our quarry, a more appropriate visitation pushing through the earth. Humbly brown, umbo reaching for the sky, a small clutch of what might be a sure road to the holy reveals itself embedded in the hummus. Fingers trembling, bruising the flesh of this woodland offering, I pluck what might become my personal deliverance, my communion. I'm a cluster headache patient, and it has been shown that psilocybin mushrooms can affect cluster headaches and keep them from happening. So for a while, I was a mushroom hunter looking for what I needed. Didn't find it. But mushrooms are the earth, and they're the guardians of earth long for us. And on this island. They're everywhere. It's magical. It's magic. But this is something else. Liminal. I woke to the soft blurred music of rain on roofs, on windows, and singing down gutters. The bed creaks as my beloved shifts in his sleep. I am drifting in the liminal space where images become words. Can I hold these thoughts long enough to pad across the painted wooden floor and put pen to paper in the diffuse dawnlight? It's warm here under wool and down, with his arm draped over my belly, whereas my pen is cold and unforgiving. Yesterday, picking mushrooms from the moths, I left clusters of their frilled orange tops behind in gratitude for their generosity. But when I harvest the words from my mind, I take them all, wringing every last image out onto the page. I am so afraid the words will never return. Which ones will I leave behind, sinking back into darkness while I lay wrapped in comforting intimacy? Quietly, I pull back the covers, scoot out from under his arm, tiptoe over to the pale page, and take up the pen in my fingers. If I can see the world truly and render it back to itself in my pen and ink sketches of words, I will have been here. I will have loved before the fragile flicker that is me finds its way back through the rain clouds into the light. Taurus. The island bull gave me the once-over as I was picking mint in the rain. I had been oblivious to his presence until an impatient snort alerted me to my own rudeness. We regarded each other warily, he with his horns and his massive head, me with my threatening, fragrant armload. Only the split rails of the fence, of a tree long dead, divided us. I marveled at the silent bulk of him. Even the squelch of the mud under his hooves was polite, restrained. Perhaps he marveled at my own improbability. The smell of mint surrounded us. The rain came down. This year, or early next, the butcher with his bolt gun and his sharp knives is coming to stop his aggression and his soft brown eyes, to steal from him the breath we both still share. He knows this already, the bull, waiting for me to acknowledge his virility, his presence, his life. I am no princess, and he no Zeus, but I wonder, staring into his thoughts, brown on brown, if I can ever hope to go as deep as he.
Thank you, Katherine. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Our last poet is Rachelle Parker.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I hope I've been enjoying the day. And I'm going to read a few poems. My narrative is pretty much a tap into my ancestral, I check in with the ancestors for their guidance. As a descendant of enslaved Africans, that's where my story comes from. In the twilight of dusk, a mother braids 3 daughters' hair and rubber bands the ends. Their shoulders bronzed and shimmered from the sun reflect the beams of lightning bugs. A stone stoop holds them and some leaves from the maple. They have collected dandelions all day and bouqueted the wilted stems, palms, and lifelines seeded. There are grape knee-high bottle tops full of scraped tar for a Skelzy game. Turnip greens and fatback scent the air and make the cricket's stomachs growl. One of Miss Harvey's dogs is at their feet. The other nuzzles Mama's full belly. The moon smiles, shaking a cloud loose of stars. And these are what I speak of as seeds. The news flashes, another badge glints in the sun, and nobody from accounting is watching but me. My niece in front of the ramen spot. My nephew packing his bass into his hatchback. My nephew changing a flat after hitting a rock in the road. Their mother, my poor sister, chewing her nails down with worry. My mama leaving the casino with a black carton of players in the crook of her arm. My daddy picking up the dry cleaning. My younger sister leaving the hairdresser, her doobie held by bobby pins. My baby sister walking her pit bull Shishi. My aunt stepping from her gray Cadillac SRX. Her brother-in-law transporting cadavers. My two brothers-in-law making a run to the soda house. The brothers using the monkey bars to do chin-ups. Miss Jones, Eleanor's mother. Miss Harris, Laura's mother. Miss Ann, pushing a shopping cart with a 5-pound bag of sugar and a box of Tetley tea to fill that big old pickle jar. Rakeem home from college, his parents picking him up from the bus station. Rakeem home from jail, his parents picking him up from the bus station. Shanika and them, Pastor Reed, Miss Maggie's boy, Running John, Lying John, Johnny O, Craigers and leopard print capris, high school sweetheart just over the George Washington Bridge, my cousins coming over for bikini night with pennies and plastic baggies, my cousin's cousins, my mama's daddy, Sonny, my Gram climbing the steps of the B-38, my Gram's second husband dropping off his Susu hand to his old job, Grandma Reese walking us to the car and giving us directions to Gino's for a whiz wit, Uncle Junior, Uncle Gerald, my grandfather, my grandfather's grandfathers, them babies, me leaving a poetry reading. And I wanted to share one of my poems from the Writing the Land Northeast anthology. Shout out to my Northeast Wilderness Trust cohort, David. And I will be reading one of those, and it's on the north side of the juniper. These are the things I feel you'll be pointed out to look for when you know that you have arrived. Look for the half-frozen pond. Mosses will be lush and pea green. Birds and otters and snakes sing your arrival, chirping and splashing and slithering. Stems and twigs in their mouths follow the beaver until he disappears behind a waterfall. It will be dry there. The darkness of a cave will cradle you, move you to tears and sleep. A peak of morning lights your way through dewed grasses to the blueberries. Fill your kerchief with wildness. Munch these new fruits. Let their juices run through your raisined skin until plump, you bursting at the seams and left bare. Go when the silver fins beckon you. They know how deep the earth is. They have laid eggs there. Slowly into the pond. Slowly dip your head under. Slowly release the dust from bitter wounds, from thick keloids at the wrist and ankles, from the mark under your eye left by feta bush. Cleansed, sit on the bank, look at your reflection, see the return of the gazelle. Then I'm going to read 3 more poems, 2 of which are brand new. Cast iron. Aunt Mary sweats onions in her olive green Dutch oven. She folds steamed rice into ground meat and rolls it in her palms until it is round. She drops these porcupines into the scented oil until browned and crusty. She puts them to roast in tomato sauce and tomato paste until done, until no longer pink in the middle. She plucks the bay leaf out when they are. 2, I am ready with my Dutch oven and bay leaf. I got the neck bones and white potatoes and cabbage that Ma had wanted. Her list short, her directions concise. Place the meat in the pan, salt. Peel the onions, slice the potatoes, add to the pot. Cover, boil, simmer. Don't be too quick to check if done. You'll know the right time. My niece wants my Dutch oven. It's too soon. There's more to steep, more iron to be heated, more recipes and ideas to try. I'll get her own, a small black lodge, maybe a quart size. She could start with a pot of beans or a peach cobbler. Either way, I'll be behind her with the bay leaf. Superb. I could see these birds. I could see birds now. Fairy wrens out my window, already dancing on a maple's branch. A puff of orange and lavender sifts through the Venetian blinds, through the screened window, talons landing in a patch of yellow petals, feathers swelling, neckline bristling, dancing the Watusi. No one to say it's not ladylike. Tail feathers fanning the jasmined air, moistened down, falling to the waiting moonflowers, the cat scratching the back door to get in, me following, a smile on my beak. And the last poem I like to think of as my urban sprawl, being energized by the nature that's beneath it. And it's where I grew up. It's an ode to Walt Whitman, The Housing Projects. 13 stories pushed through cracks, capped with water tanks and smokestacks, surrounded by, oh my God, I can't believe this. Back up. I believe this. I just blanked. We'll try it again. Ode to Walt Whitman, The Housing Projects. 13 stories pushed through cracks, capped with water tanks and smokestacks, insulated by the world, and it's a swirl. White concrete walls with a blank slate held my name up in bright red paint. Enough flights of stairs to fly down, steps taken 2 by 2 until on the ground. Summer, you offered the most fun. Long days, long kisses from the sun. Yellow outlines for games with cans. Part of a day with no set plans. Maple leaves round our racetrack. The tar, if you fell, showed no slack. Jump rope slaps from telephone wire. No amount of Nembrocks could tire. Doting on us kids to show your care. The ice cream truck's weight you'd bear. Halls are now dank and dark. Every kind of crime left its mark. Silver chain links replaced with black bars. Scaffolding began to block the stars. As brick and mortar swell with fears, panes and panes of glass shed tears. Never daunted by all these things. You still know the heart that sings. Musty jacket, tattered and worn, add attention and blowing your horn. Fiercely you continue standing guard over little girls in cowboy boots and leotard.